Welcome to TapHere, the podcast that covers everything related to technology, to payments, to transactions, and everything in between. It's really all about the movement of money. I'm your host, Corey Goldman, and today with me is Alex Mazelow. He is an aficionado, an expert in all things that personally I love to talk about, which is fashion, retail, technology, and everything from LVMH and Louis Vuitton, all that kind of stuff, all the way down to Zara and even Target. And he can certainly speak a little bit more about his background, but welcome, Alex. I'm really excited to talk to you about a bunch of this stuff.
Thanks, Corey. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for the nice introduction. If you want me to add a little color to it, so I've been working in the apparel retail space for my entire career, about 22 years. I have an MBA in supply chain and retail management, and I'm in my first year of a 3-year PhD program where I am specifically studying consumer behavior in luxury purchases.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about, just to kind of drill down a little bit, is getting your perspective on how you feel technology, especially in the last couple of years, has really sort of changed the game in terms of more of the luxury side of the retailers.
I would say that the evolution of technology in minimizing shrinkage, which is what is typically referred to in a retail environment, generally just loss of product, whether it's theft or organized theft, or it's someone in the stockroom taking a few things out the back door every day, which adds up. So there's lots of different ways that people have been able to steal goods from these companies in their stores, in department stores, multi-brand stores, whatever. So huge focus for these luxury brands, contemporary brands. And so the evolution of it has been, it definitely in keeping with how technology in general has advanced. But I would say that since AI has come into the forefront of people's honestly everyday conversations, vision,
like
whatever. Companies are increasingly turning to AI to assist them with, minimizing shrink, but also in many different forms. The checkout process, the fitting room experience, and things that can disappear or be concealed in those types of environments. So there's many different ways that AI and general technology and the advance of it has been used to minimize shrink. It's always a problem because those who steal or produce fakes and anything in between are always going to be able to use the same type of technology to get around that.
That's, I think, what's interesting is, and everyone, from an AI perspective in general, is that nobody seems to be able to keep up with how quick this stuff is going, right?
Yep.
And, we hear all about sort of AI sort of streamlining payments. We talk about AI streamlining sort of back office operations, different industries.
Yeah.
Retail is a whole other beast, know, and so you've got obviously this online presence, but then really at the end of the day, it's about the actual product and thinking about luxury, like a Hermes bag or a Gucci scarf or whatever.
Yeah.
Once that stuff gets taken, it's hard to track. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how AI is maybe, hopefully, I guess, for retailers or some of these brands, making it better.
So there's a couple things. So AI in the retail, as I understand it, and this is, like you said, it's changing every day. AI is primarily being used in the luxury retail space online. In terms of luxury purchases online, where AI is really coming in is in a couple ways. First of all, take Nike, for example. Sorry, not a luxury brand, but just take Nike, for example. This hype sneaker trend is over, but it was, very popular for many years. And if you remember, you were a part of it, the way that Nike structured it was they'd have hype drops. You could see them on the app, and then they'd be made available on the app or the website.
Oh, yeah. You should see my shoe collection.
Okay, so
wear right now.
There you go. There you go. And I think you have teenage kids, so you're aware. So there was such fraud online with buyers who were actually just resellers being able to penetrate, whatever the e-commerce structure they had going. They were able to buy multiple pairs and things like that. So Nike used AI to watch and monitor suspicious behavior on the part of those who are on their website just prior to launches.
There was also talk about it. Again, I don't want to take you too far
Nope.
sideways, but
Yeah.
even there were people who were targeting trains, shipments of the goods themselves,
Yeah.
and it's kind of literally doing like a heist in the middle of Arizona or something.
Absolutely.
To get these shoes, and I'm wondering, you don't hear about that as much. That may just be that they don't report on it, but I'm wondering if maybe that's a part of the picture too.
They definitely don't report on it. That would be a huge blow to their supply chain. Nike is in a very bad position right now, and I don't think they want to talk about the negative parts of their business right now. But yeah, that's all part and parcel with how the goods are manufactured, how they leave the various factories where they're produced. But I will say, Corey, that the technology is only as good as the people who are operating it. So in the situation that you're talking about, it's a collaborative effort between the people that take it off the manufacturing, like from the shelves into the boxes onto the truck or the train or whatever it is. There's lots of communication, but to your point, it's all traceable because of the technology that it is embedded with.
So one of the things that's come up, at least on the technology side, is how blockchain, which is obviously a much, at least it's a type of technology where you can really trace and record everything very, very specifically, how that's kind of feeding into retail. And I know you had mentioned this in part of our conversation earlier, that there's something called blockchain-based authentication. And when you're talking about some of these brands, like Montclair, for instance, tell us how you have seen that kind of evolve and maybe reduce some of that theft, fraud.
I will, and this is a great example. You were asking me a moment ago, but also about AI. So this is actually a great example of a technology that you just spoke about that was instituted and is now being circumvented by AI, and I'll tell you why. So the technology that you mentioned is not that new, I'd say inside of 5 or 7 years. And it's got a few variations, but if you're buying a Montclair jacket, to use your example, Canada Goose, lots of brands use this. You'll notice that in the tag, either the care and content label or in another place sewn inside the garment.
There's like 6 different labels.
Yeah, and it's particularly or more often represented as a QR code. In the case of Montclair, they've actually, it's just their logo, which is kind of a hologram. You scan it. And so there was a methodology there that in order to authenticate the product, whether from whether it's resale or it's a fake or whatever it is, you would scan or take a photo of that QR code or hologram or whatever it was. And the point was that it was supposed to direct you online to a specific place that the brand designated. And if that happened, the item is authentic. But the point I was trying to make was they were a very early adopter in using AI for customer service. It didn't go well, but where they are finding some success is in their styling service. So essentially what it's doing is, and Essence is actually doing this now too. When you log into your profile there, it knows what you looked at the last time you were on, whether it was the day prior, the month prior. And so what Farfetch does is they give you recommendations based on what's come in that's new, predicated on what you looked at last time. So if you really like check blazers or houndstooth blazers, you're going to get more recommendations for those. Where Essence is using AI is controversial in my mind. It just fills your cart up for you. And so, again, based on your browsing and purchase history. And again, this is a feature they're just testing. So I don't actually, and Essence is in a lot of their own difficulty right now. So we'll see what goes on with that. But so that's a totally different customer experience. You really just go on the website, log in, and go to your cart and see what Essence has recommended for you. So
based on what though?
Your anything you've purchased prior.
Just your okay.
And your browsing history within their website.
Within their website.
Yeah.
Anything else?
We hope. Also, Essence.
Now we're getting into like a whole privacy issue, which is something I want to talk to you about.
Absolutely, but Essence has there's a feature on Essence that they've had for many years, which I personally like, which is a fit predictor. This is not a new technology, but Essence was one of the first e-commerce websites to roll it out. And it essentially, Essence carries so many different brands of footwear for sneakers, for example, from lots of different countries. Some are in UK sizes, a lot are in Euro sizes, some are in American sizes, and so they all, vary. And so what Essence's Fit Predictor technology did was it says, okay, tell me 3 brands of shoes that you've bought before and what is your size. And it'll give you a list to choose from, 50 brands. Once you do that, they're able to tell you then, if I'm looking at a pair of Churches, which is UK sizing, which I can never wrap my head around. It's got it knows your foot, so it's going to tell you what size you'd be in Churches.
Okay.
So that's been great, but so it also has that information. So if it's filling up your cart for you, it's putting in the correct sizes, and it's likely giving you the colors that they know that you like based on your purchase history or what you've looked at before. So in a sense, Corey, this is a very sophisticated way of using artificial intelligence to enhance the customer experience.
Okay.
However, what they're finding now, and now meaning quite recently, is that there are some negative impacts to the consumer in terms of their experience, whether it's too anonymous, or it's a little pushy from the brand, or it's a lot pushy from the brand. And so what I predict, and I know we'll talk more about predictions later, I think we will, what I think is going to happen is they're going to bring back the human element to styling in an e-commerce environment to a degree.
Okay. So, thinking about all this, we sort of started with like the transactional, authentication component. Then we went into sort of the customer experience and even some privacy discussion about that. All of which is interesting. So the question is, all this is kind of happening in real time, right? Like all these different companies are experimenting with all this stuff. So the question is, like from a retail perspective, one would think that a Montclair or any retailer, any brand, what they ultimately want to do is, number one, know the customer. Number two, make sure that nothing gets stolen from, production to, shipment to somebody wearing it. And number three, get that customer to come back. How does all this fit in from a tech perspective, do you think?
It's a great question, a big question to answer, because, at the beginning of your question, you kind of isolated the different overarching things that we're talking about. And the truth is, Corey, that they can't be isolated. They are all part of the same omni-channel experience for the customer. And so what I mean by that more specifically is that brands, so many things have happened with brands over the years, and they've pulled out of wholesale, and they've opened up their own mono-brand stores, but they're in department stores, and they're online on their own websites, but they're also sold on a multi-brand website. So, where we are right now, the economy is tough. Luxury specifically is having a very, very tough time for, a myriad of reasons. And so the reason I say this is that we're seeing brands go back to who's paying the bills, which is the customer, and enhancing their experience. And so the experience for the customer has to be, or needs to be, the same or similar, no matter how they're experiencing the product. And when I say experiencing the product, I mean consuming an ad, print, social media, billboard, looking at the product on a website, an iPad, a phone, and experiencing it in a brick and mortar environment, whether that's a department store or a mono-brand store, whether it's in a suburban mall or it's on, Fifth Avenue, Bloor Street, you name it. The experience has to be similar. So, and then, in terms of AI, so I was highlighting a moment ago some of the pitfalls that we're seeing. However, AI, there's a lot that brands can do with AI in store to enhance the customer experience. And so, again, talking a little bit more about the luxury space, there is luxury consumers, whether they're actually purchasers or aspirational in the sense that they just want to be in the store and look around, it needs to feel high-end. It looks high-end. These stores spend millions of dollars on their fixtures and their build-outs. It's got to feel high-end. And part of it not feeling high-end is seeing security cameras everywhere. That's not part of the experience that they're looking to give to their customers. So where we're going to see AI really come into the forefront, I think, is that, first of all, surveillance technology is going to be completely hidden. And what AI will bring to the table are different ways of identifying consumers and perhaps suspicious behavior. Heat mapping, looking at where there are actually in the store products missing from a rack that had been kind of spaced and merchandised. These are not brand new thoughts. They've been tested quietly over the last couple of years. And there were some initial concerns and issues with surveillance in the sense that AI is only so good as the information that they're getting.
Yeah.
And so there was some concerns about the way that AI was identifying customers based on the way that they look.
Well, I mean, you could start to think of like profiling, right? You
where I
walk
was
through the
going.
airport. There's cameras everywhere.
Yep.
They're reading your face.
Yep.
They're taking all kinds of information.
Right.
So yeah. So that makes sense, right? So there would be some blowback to that kind of.
Well, the blowback came. Yes, for sure. The blowback came when that information.
Yeah.
Was conveyed to sales associates in real time.
Right.
That's where the profiling comes. So anyways, again, these are early iterations of a technology,
Yeah.
but we're going to see for sure that AI will provide an experience for consumers, at least in luxury stores, that is less obvious in terms of what it actually is.
Right. One thing we haven't done yet that I'd like to do is define for me what a luxury buyer in your mind or in your view, in your research is. Who is that person? How much do they spend on luxury goods? What do they spend that on? What kinds of things are we talking about here? Clothing, I'm assuming.
I'm glad you asked me that question because I think my answer will surprise you. And I don't have a recent statistic, but I can tell you for sure that the vast majority of revenue that luxury brands bring in are from people who cannot afford their product, from aspirational customers.
Okay.
The top selling items at luxury stores are the least expensive. Fragrances, which also, by the way, happen to be the highest margin. This is by no coincidence, but we're talking about fragrances, beauty, and small leather goods, also keychains, things like that. The reason, Corey, is because luxury brands have forever, as part of their marketing, been selling us a lifestyle, not a product. The product is a byproduct of wanting to be part of that lifestyle. So, you see any luxury ads you see, I'll use Brunello Cucinelli as an example because you can get lost in those ads. You see these beautiful long dinner tables and on some, field.
Color coordinated.
And they're having this beautiful dinner in Tuscany somewhere, and it's not about
what corduroy look amazing.
They do, which is not easy. But they're looking to have people want to be a part of the lifestyle that they're presenting.
For sure.
And so, the average consumer by far cannot afford to spend $6,000 on a Dior handbag, but they can go in the Dior store and they can buy a lipstick for $100 and they're still getting the experience.
I mean, I love how our conversation has meandered and it's been great. And I think that really honestly speaks to how pervasive technology has really impacted the overall industry. And again, we started by talking about how it would be tough to narrow down.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to narrow it down a little bit.
Okay.
One technology I'm familiar with, and I actually wrote an article about this, 15 years ago, if not longer, is RFID, so radio frequency identification.
Yeah.
I know this because I did research on it. You put a little, piece of metal or something in there, you sew it into the clothing or whatever the item is. Mm-hmm. It gets tracked. It's for inventory purposes. It's for anti-theft prevention. Talk to me a little bit because I understand that that's now something that at least more mass retailers like a Zara are now leaning more into and using.
Yeah, that's a great point. To bring it back a little bit further, as I recall, RFID was in apparel retailer was piloted by JCPenney.
Who?
Exactly. I'm going to say mid 80s.
All right.
And it was a total disaster. Like it didn't work. You'll remember there were these huge obstacles that when you walked in and out the door that would read make this big alarm and people were always confused and they're looking at their bags and then you'd have to go back in and they'd rub it over some.
That wasn't me. That was, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
anyways, it was and JCPenney, they were an early adopter. They rolled it out into all their stores, and they had to actually pull back. After that, RFID has gone through many different iterations, and so where it is now. So you talked about little chips and things like that. Where it is right now, and Zara is piloting this.
Yeah.
They're using micro thin wires. They look like threads that are equipped with RFID technology, and they're just being sewn into the garment. So there's literally no way. Whereas there was the old tag-based system where you could just. I mentioned when we started to speak that you could just buy something to remove it from Amazon.
Sure.
The chips, that were always in the care and content label, those can just be cut out. I mean, there's creative ways that thieves have to circumvent all of these various technologies, but in the way that Zara is using it by actually embedding it into the clothing, it really can never be removed. And what's interesting about it too is the investment that Zara is making into doing this, because their average retail price is $60, $70. We're not talking about a high-end
Right.
handbag or something, but it goes back to a question you asked me a while ago, which is what are firms doing and how are they investing in these types of things? And while honestly I'm not seeing that the luxury firms are the leaders here, it's mass market retailers. Zara is always the best example of how technology can be used to enhance a retailer. Zara's been on my radar.
Yeah, let's get into it.
If you want to get into it.
Yeah. Like, everybody knows Zara at this point. They're kind of known for fast fashion, for knocking off, things. It's like, Gucci comes out with something nice, and I'm like, oh, well, Zara, that looks kind of like it, and I may as well just go there and spend $50.
Exactly, and I think Zara didn't invent that model, but where they came in and in my belief, why they are so wildly successful.
Technology.
It's all technology. They were, even if you go to the store now at Yorkdale Mall around the corner, you're going to see sales associates. I'm sure you've noticed if you go in there, I certainly do. There's sales associates, although I wouldn't really call them that. They're just kind of employees that walk around the store.
Like zhuzhers, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Yeah. But they're all carrying little iPhone-like devices. Well, those devices are the key to Zara's success, and I'll tell you why. They have figured out a way, it's all proprietary technology, and they track item movement in real time amongst their many thousands of stores on the globe. And so they are able to react in real time to SKUs that are either selling quickly or not selling at all. So to give you an example, if you go again to our local store here and there's a yellow wool sweater sitting there and there's 10 units of it.
Yeah.
And it's been on the floor for 2 days and they haven't sold 1 unit.
Because it's yellow, but yeah.
Anyway. Potentially that could be the reason.
Buyer beware.
I hear you. Depends on your
complexion.
No, for sure, and personal style. Yeah. Anyways, if that sweater has not moved in 48 hours, they know where it's moving. It could be in Madrid. That sweater is boxed up and shipped out overnight to Madrid.
Wow.
And it's going there because it's going to sell it in the Madrid store in a day or two. And so that's one of the reasons why Zara, for a fast fashion retailer or just a retailer in general, they have 2 sales per year, 2 seasonal sales. I mean, imagine the amount of inventory they produce, and those are the only sales that they have in terms of frequency. It's because they are never stuck with inventory because they have a global, very highly advanced global distribution and supply chain system that they own because it's vertically integrated.
Right.
Now, another thing they're able to do with technology is to read trends in real time and react to them. So, for example, we'll use the yellow sweater. Let's say a lot of people have tried it on and they know who's trying it on because that same technology, you go to the fitting room, no longer at the Zara fitting room are they counting the items and giving you one of those plastic things to hang on the door that says 6, indicating how many items you have. All they do is you've got a whole pile of clothes, they take their device, they go like this, and because the technology is embedded in the fabric now, they know exactly what you're taking into the fitting room. They also know what you didn't purchase. And so they're able to then react. So they've got this yellow sweater. Maybe it's not selling anywhere. Maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with the design of that sweater. But maybe a lot of people have tried it on and it's just the color. Well, they're going to react really quickly. And in 2 to 3 weeks, that same sweater in navy is back in the store. And they're able to do all of this through real-time analytics. Now, in their headquarters in Spain, which is where the parent company is based, they have a technology department that would rival a large government organization. I mean, it's really unbelievable because they're analyzing so many different things at the same time. They are analyzing fashion shows that are happening at Paris Fashion Week and what the real-time reaction is to those styles.
Yeah.
And they're copying them. And again, they're in Zara stores in 3 weeks, sometimes before the actual designer has those items in their designer stores.
Yeah.
And again, all technology and part of their vertical integration. They're also producing a lot of their merchandise on the boat that is bringing the textiles from where the textiles are produced to North America or Western Europe, for example.
Literally on the boat?
Literally, literally on the boat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That actually explains a lot.
Yeah.
You wonder, like, how does this stuff show up so quickly?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like literally, yeah, you'll have somebody like, oh, we're launching the, spring, summer collection of this, very high-end entity, and then literally
there.
like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, it's in the Zara store.
Yeah.
I mean, what? Tell us a little bit more about what you know about that. I mean, like where did... I don't even know where to sort of begin and end, but like, it's fascinating to me.
So at their headquarters, there's a name for their headquarters that I forget right now. It's in Spain, the Inditex headquarters, that is. There's an analytics team. It's huge. It's very secretive in the sense that, I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find a photo of it anywhere. It's definitely not on their website. There's no secret photos. But they have a very large team of analysts, and those analysts look at every consumer trend possible, and that's consumer trends amongst people who are actually physically in their stores, consumers that are on their website, make a purchase or do not make a purchase. It's fashion shows that are in New York and Paris. It's consumer reactions to other brands, other trends, other color stories. They have access to so much information. And part of what their analytics team does is they actually use all that data that is procured to create actionable real-time insights for the various other departments within the company. Design, textile manufacturing, pattern making, actual production, logistics and transportation. Zara has such a vast network of stores. Obviously the fashion that they sell at a store in Mexico City is going to be quite a bit different than what's available in Soho, New York, or here in Toronto, because consumers' tastes are different.
Right.
And so when you look at other mass retailers, for example, J. Crew, and I love J. Crew, but it's the same inventory in every single one of their stores. Right. Same as Aritzia, actually. So Aritzia, their strategy is just totally different in terms of choosing stores, and that's a whole other thing that we can get into at a different time. But my overall point is that the technology at Zara has enabled them to really make the decisions required quickly to always keep them ahead.
That's incredible. So, and it's interesting because as you're talking about all this, it sort of brings it all together. So we're talking about, obviously, sort of tracking goods from A to B. We're talking about, online, where, different sort of real-time clicks and decisions and, people's eyes are dictating or at least influencing how a Zara is going to be producing its next lineup of clothing.
Very much so.
And then, of course, they're going to want to track it all. They're going to want to move it from store to store, like you mentioned, because the yellow isn't selling.
Yeah.
They're going to want to maybe, introduce something else because maybe it's like wildly popular and they want to bring it in a different material or color.
Well, absolutely. And I also find that, and this is more recent, Zara's also, you don't go into Zara to get service, right? No one's helping you find a sweater.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
It's not their model, right? But they are adaptive in the sense that they are responsive to the way that consumers interpret their technology. They, during the COVID years and kind of right after that, they were really pushing their app very hard. And that would be the data center for you, for all of your purchases. It keeps all your receipts. You scan a QR code. You can shop through there. I mean, there's a million things that you could have done through that app. But they got some pushback on it from consumers because their consumer base is extremely diverse in age, right? There's Gen Zs and Gen Alphas actually that are shopping there,
Yep.
but there's also boomers and above shopping there too. And in the older generations, we're seeing a lot of resistance about downloading apps in general if they're not going to enhance that person's life, or they're an occasional shopper, whatever it is.
I'm not going to download an app just to do this, the brand or the store
Exactly.
favor. It's got to do something for me.
I see technology in retail apparel and leather goods, things like that, continuing to become faster in terms of the responsiveness. Like, we talked about Zara for the last little while, but also the checkout experience. You talk about Uniqlo, for example. I mean, they're all checkout kiosks. You don't have to scan anything anymore. You just dump it in this bin.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It reads everything in a second, and it gives you your total. So that type of speed, I believe, will continue to be a driver for brands, retailers, and those developing the technology for them. I absolutely think that we will see a time where transactions are more secure because of technology. A lot less of the data breaches and credit card fraud, amongst individual consumers that are victims, but also from organized crime rings that are, precipitating this. So I would say definitely faster, definitely more secure. And I think in the next couple of years, a lot of the brands will figure out how this is important to the customer experience, in terms of whether, what you're seeing in a physical store, what you're not seeing in an e-commerce environment, and really taking the customer experience as the number one driver of how to use the technology.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, it's like, and I mean, we started this where we're going to be able to talk, and then we could talk about absolutely everything under the sun. And I find it really fascinating. I mean, I really do. And you see, especially even the like post-COVID environment, the last couple of years, things have definitely changed, you know, and then sort of getting an idea about where it's going.
And I think, Corey, to sum it up, I think right now, and for the last little while, technology's been used as a reactive measure for brands. And where I think that's going to change is it'll become something more proactive, more thought out, and utilized in different ways to customize the experience and make it best for everyone. I think we're at a point right now where everyone's playing catch up with AI, kind of just burst into the scene. A lot of people don't know how to use it properly. And we're seeing huge resets in a lot of these consumer markets like luxury goods. And so there will be a time in the not so distant future where I think these things will really come together in a very positive way to enhance revenue for the brands, the experience for the consumer, and really everything in between.
Well, look, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Alex Mazelow, absolutely a pleasure to speak. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do on a podcast, and we'll keep it coming. And of course, stay tuned for our next guest on our next episode, which is going to be about wire and fraud.